Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. That seems like fun. I don't even know if you can go out and buy a lottery ticket anymore. You can go out, of course. Some states, I imagine, are reopened. I don't know whether they ever shut their lotteries. I was actually wondering about that this morning. What a fantastic thing it would be to win the lottery in the middle of all this. That would really be fantastic to win the lottery in the middle of anything, I guess. But that would lift your spirits a little bit. But I don't know. I don't know that I've just not looked. I rarely look to see whether anyone won the lottery anyway, because it's not going to be me, and I don't play the lottery enough for it to be me, so it doesn't often happen. But yeah, you know, I don't know whether it's just drowned in the news, or there haven't been any lotteries, or haven't been any big jackpots, or people think it's ridiculous. I would imagine it's a non-essential sort of service, not to the people who win, but whatever. I don't know. I got no idea. Anyway, if it's open in your state, I don't know. You're probably one of 250 million people running out to buy lottery tickets with 20s on them, so forget it. They ran out a long time ago, just like meat, bread, toilet paper, freezers, as a matter of fact, webcams, etc. There's a shortage of lottery tickets out there. All right. Well, anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. The president is dangerously incompetent, incredibly stupid, and evil person, and deserves to be deposed, removed from office immediately, probably imprisoned, but okay, you know, if we like the rule of law still in this country, we might want to put him on trial or something. This morning, as it happens, he is angrily tweeting about his intention to, I don't know, prosecute people in Michigan for something. He's made up another crime, and the people in Michigan are committing that crime right now. According to the president, who tweeted an hour ago, breaking, he's picked up that Twitter parlance. Michigan sends absentee ballots to 7.7 million people ahead of the primaries and the general election. This was done illegally. This is the president of the United States, allegedly. This was done illegally and without authorization by a rogue Secretary of State. I will ask to hold up funding to Michigan if they want to go down this voter fraud path. And I guess he's got more to say about it. There's an ellipsis after his, or part of an ellipsis anyway, after his exclamation point. I'm not certain what this is supposed to mean. Exclamation point, period, period. It's not a full three period ellipsis. I'm not certain whether it's meant to be there or not. What can you do? He's crazy. Michigan is not sending absentee ballots to anyone at the moment. They have sent out applications. A very prudent move by the Secretary of State in the middle of the pandemic, in one of the states hardest hit by the pandemic. The Secretary of State has given people the opportunity, now that he's mailed them applications, she, I don't know, mailed applications out, and now people can, if they wish, to have an absentee ballot, ask for one. That's the great illegality for which the president is now looking to hold up funding to Michigan, one of the states, again, hardest hit by the pandemic that he caused. You might as well go ahead and lay that at his feet. It's properly done, I think. You know, just as he forced people out into line in Wisconsin in the middle of the pandemic, resulting in, last time we checked in on it, something in the neighborhood of 70-something cases of coronavirus among poll workers and those who had to go out and stand in line. And it's been some time since we checked. I don't know if they stopped tracking that or we just stopped tracking their tracking of it. But at any rate, he's now going to do the same to Michigan. How are we doing on the coronavirus pandemic? Nationally, globally, we are at 1.57 million cases here in the United States, poised to go over 1.6 in the next day and a half or so. Since we're still in the middle of the week, we're running about, in the neighborhood of, let's see, yesterday we ran 20,000 or so new cases. The numbers, I think, are coming down a little bit. as the virus spreads through less populated areas than New York City. We're down to about 20,000 new cases from a time when we were posting 25 to 30,000 new cases. Essentially, we're testing at an increased rate, but no matter how much we increase the testing, we just keep coming back with about the same positivity rate. Still, it's dipping a little bit, down from the early days when they really didn't have enough tests to just completely inadequate numbers of tests. Where we stand now, 93,561 deaths, according to Worldometer's information. And many of you have noticed the discrepancy between Worldometer's and the New York Times, their dashboard, the Johns Hopkins dashboard. They're different. Worldometers tends to run a little bit ahead of those two sources, but pretty consistently so. And because I've been basing things on the Worldometers numbers for so long, I didn't think it doesn't make methodological sense to switch sources in the middle. So we're set to pass our 95,000 deaths or so, poised, right on the brink of 100,000. It has been, or yesterday, it was exactly 1 month since I started watching that a little more closely, watching the numbers tick up, because we were just passing 40,000 deaths a month ago. That is to say, April 19th, yesterday, a month ago. And the president was still clinging at that point to the idea that this was all going to peter out around 60,000 deaths. You'll remember, of course, the cubic fit, that hadn't come out yet, the cubic fit graph that showed the whole thing ending around 60,000. And then later showed the last deaths occurring in the United States along about a week ago, I think, at this point. But remember that the prediction was about 60,000. So nearly 60,000 additional people have died in that month since the president predicted that the whole thing would wrap up around 60,000. So with the excess deaths, of course, I'm sure we're well past that. Then he moved the goalposts, et cetera, et cetera. But what that brings you to is this rather stark realization that 50 to 55,000 people died last month. In the last 31 days, I haven't counted the number of days, I guess moving from April over, would have been just 30 days, since April 19th. But that's an astounding number, and I guess just another thing to add to the pile of information that should by now have convinced you that this isn't the flu. You don't have a flu season's worth of deaths all in 1 month and say, yeah, this is just another one of those flus, or that it's a 10 out of 10, our response to this thing. We've been doing great. It's a rather staggering number to say, even if we just go by the Worldometer information, 53,000 people in a month. Elsewhere around the world, just before we jump over to Greg Dworkin, a few other things. If you're watching the race to the bottom, essentially, Russia, now just the second country in the world to report, anyway, over 300,000 cases of COVID-19 within their borders. Things are starting to shake out to where the most populous countries are rising to the top, as ought to be expected, given what we're dealing with here. And the number of cases per 1 million population is becoming a less important measure. But we also have, a few days ago, India moving into the category of the 11th country in the world to post six figures in the number of cases. We, by the way, in terms of our total cases per 1 million population, are poised, fairly certain to pass Belgium, one of the hardest hit countries, and the one we mentioned on Monday. Hit so hard, in fact, that the entire, seemed like the healthcare workers that the Prime Minister was coming to visit had turned their backs on him. You remember that Greg mentioned that, and let's find out what Greg's ready to mention today. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hey, good morning. I was just perusing through Twitter as you were speaking, picking up a few nuggets I thought we'd mention before moving on to the more meaty and substantial parts.
Oh, I thought you said medium.
So, for example, we have this I don't know. I haven't even checked out who he is. Just this bizarre tweet here by a fellow named Roosh, Roosh.
Oh,
writes,
yeah.
Wearing a mask in public is humiliating.
Yes, right. I did see him say
And
that.
I suggested to him, why don't you do pants now?
Yeah, well, he probably would. I think he might be one of those, men can do anything they want guys. He's an interesting case, I guess. I don't know exactly who he is either, but his humiliation was duly noted.
Right. We have real Donald Trump, as you pointed out, threatening to make Ukraine out of Michigan.
Yes.
And Sam Stein tweets, this is objectively nuts and the exact sort of scenario that the constitutional law professors warned about during impeachment hearings. Just as a reminder.
Right. Oh, that's true. That's a good catch.
But the weird thing is, this is happening in the middle of an actual dam breaking. The dam is broken in Michigan. What does that mean? It means like water is flooding Midland.
That's where it's, yeah.
They're going to be 9 feet by Wednesday. So they're in the midst of a bad coronavirus outbreak.
Yes.
They are in the middle of a two-dam spot breach. There are two breaches.
Right, yes.
And so actual catastrophes, and Trump is threatening to withhold funds at the moment because, like, he wants to lose Michigan. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know. This is,
I mean, forget about the fact that we're only talking about applications, which are perfectly legal. Iowa just did that with a Republican Secretary of State. I mean, it's about as big an issue as Susan Rice's email.
Yeah, that's another
which is
thing.
in the news, by the way. That was released,
wow.
And it's a bombshell. No, it's not a bombshell. Yes, it is a bombshell. Look, it says right here that they're so devious and diabolical that they were doing everything by the book. There you go. I've run rings about you logically.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, you look at that and you say, I don't know. There's so much of this that you look at and say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, we have that. Now, Senator Marsha Blackburn tweets, Susan Rice knew exactly what she was doing. That's why she wrote herself emails in a desperate attempt to cover her tracks. And I looked at that and I said, now, normally I'd say she's paid to be this stupid, but in this case, I don't know.
The check is late. She might not be getting paid to be this stupid.
Might actually be this stupid. She may be volunteering.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I think, long story short, in case anybody hasn't seen the Susan Rice emails, she emailed herself to a memo, having left the meeting. Here's something important. We met about what to do about.
People often do.
Yeah, right. We learned all about it with James Comey, but of course, on the Republican side, I'll say, aha, see, the criminal James Comey. She's doing the same thing. She left the meeting and put notes to herself in email. What did the president say about how we should handle the fact that Mike Flynn is a spy and a traitor? And the answer was the president said, do it right.
And do it by the book.
Yeah.
And the thing is, to remind people, the accusation is that Obama directed his intelligence apparatus to unmask Mike Flynn on purpose. Yes. The concept of masking is you don't know who it is. So when you ask to unmask somebody, you don't know who that is, which is why they're masked and why you have to unmask them.
Right.
So the idea that he did it deliberately to get Mike Flynn without knowing that it was Mike Flynn, you got to run logical rings to understand that part.
Yeah.
And Susan Rice says, okay, this happened. This is how we did it. And Obama says, basically, don't do anything that isn't by the book. Now, Brad Moss, who is an attorney who with Mark Zaid defends a lot of the whistleblowers, says the only people who could read Susan Rice's email and conclude it shows a scandal are those who have been popping the hydroxy pills like they're candy, because it does have a side effect perhaps of making you a little delusional.
I have wondered about that, about whether we're seeing that.
Well,
no, but
among these people, he's lying about taking it. He's not taking it.
Well, yeah. I actually, you know what made me wonder was, at first I wondered, all of these is a completely different subject in a way. The proliferation of crazy videos of people absolutely losing their minds in various settings, stores, etc., and screaming at, well, generally speaking, screaming at black people for no particular reason. But then I thought, all we're doing
cops
is
because you live in the neighborhood,
right.
And you have to prove it to me because I, a citizen, don't believe the cop.
Right, and possibly sometimes shooting them for doing that. But in this case, cop, no, he didn't get shot. That was good. because he had a gun on, and you could tell that would be a problem to shoot at him. But yeah, then I sort of realized, I don't know if it's hydroxychloroquine so much as people are home, they have cameras, and we're our regular amount of racists. Oh.
All right. So anyway, I think that it was Charlie Sykes who described the Susan Rice email,
yes,
which was supposed to be the big revelation coming, as the nothing burger continent on which all other nothing burgers are built upon.
I mean, that's pretty good. It's funny, but also it's funny because it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Mike Pompeo and his wife threw lavish dinners at taxpayer expense for corporate executives, Fox host, GOP power players, and at least one NASCAR driver, says Greg Miller.
Wow.
State employees raised concern. It seemed he was building donor base on a government dime. In other words, he's planning, after Trump loses in 2020, to be the presidential nominee in 2024, competing, of course, with Donald Trump Jr. and
right.
The South Carolina governor, whose loyalty is somewhat in question, Nikki Haley. So he's building the data based on your dollar because everybody knows Democrats are corrupt.
Right. Well, he's almost certainly doing that. A lot of people get accused of doing that, but he also, of course, he made the State Department people probably pass canapes at the parties as well.
Right. Now, we've talked in the past about the way that government employees who work within the system tend to be advocates and not activists, who are people who are outside the system agitating for more. But the best way to turn an advocate into an activist is to try to shut them up. And that's what's happened at CDC. Apparently, CDC subversively, without notice or warning, and despite being muzzled, published their 60-page How to Open Up the Country plan this morning.
Oh, the new one? Is it the one we were missing?
The real one.
Before?
The one that they were working on for months.
Okay. Hey.
That they did a trial that was released, not by them. Somebody leaked it. But this is the full 60-page version of it, and it's on their website. They just didn't announce it. They just put it up.
All right. Hey, that's an approach that they learned from the president. It might be illegal. I don't know. Try it. Go find out.
Maybe
see if they can stop you.
They're not allowed to get mailed an application to put it up. That would be
right.
something you get your funds cut for. But actually putting up, that's okay.
Okay, well, they have gone and done it, and there it is. It was already out there, but now it's up, and I'm sure the president will scream. He may try to take it down again, but all right. I like the approach.
Right, and again, because we're doing sort of lightning round stuff, the last thing I'll mention is that you remember Tara Reid?
I do. Yes.
Tara Reid was somebody who accused Joe Biden of inappropriate sexual activity. Sure. And her story kind of fell apart because a lot of it didn't match, and she changed it over time. It turns out that looking at Tara Reid herself is a difficult thing to do because you really don't want to go after the victim of a potential crime like this. On the other hand, when you're a fabulist, your past history does come into question because it questions whether or not you're being truthful about what happened. So that's fair game.
You definitely want to try and check into, all right, well, is this a truth-telling kind of person, I guess? Yes.
Exactly. So now anybody who pushes Tara Reid forward, whether it's Katie Halper or Ryan Grimm or any of those journalists, really ought to be ashamed of themselves because basically what they did is they didn't vet her. They pushed her out there. And then she's the one that takes the brunt of all of this. And they just say, okay, well, whatever, let's move on to something else.
Oh, have they moved on?
Which that is. Well, I don't know if they've moved on, but they're not the ones that are getting the brunt of the criticism, and they should. They deserve it. And Sadie Doyle wrote a very nice piece about that. She believes Tara, but thinks that the people who pushed her out did her and everybody a disservice by not vetting what she was saying first, which I think is a very fair read. Now, this morning caught my eye. Tara Reid apparently lied to CNN about graduating from and teaching at Antioch University. Reid told CNN she received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Antioch University in Seattle under the auspices of a protected program, personally working with the former president of the school to ensure her identity was protected while she obtained credits for her degree. She also said she was a visiting professor at the school on and off for 5 years. Presented with this, Karen Hamilton, an Antioch University spokesperson, told CNN that Alexander McCabe attended but did not graduate. She was never a faculty member. She did provide several hours of administrative work. And an Antioch University official told CNN there is no such thing as a protected program. It doesn't exist and it never has.
I see.
So
Wow,
when you
there's a
start
protected
vetting
program.
and you find that somebody is a fabulous making stuff up, and then you have this story that you yourself kind of don't believe because you think she's a fabulist and makes stuff up, then you say, well, this is stupid. I don't understand why this is still a story.
I guess
that's my point of view.
That's a pretty...
You're looking for a pattern. You're looking for a pattern.
Yeah.
Does Biden have a pattern of touching people inappropriately, like massaging their backs? Yes. Is that the same thing as sexual abuse? No. Is there a history of him doing sexual abuse in his entire long history, including being vetted for vice president with rumors and talking to former staff? No, there is not. So if somebody makes something up that doesn't fit and you don't see a pattern, you say, well, I don't know. And then if you think that they're making stuff up and you see a pattern for making stuff up, then you say to yourself, I do know.
I guess so. Do you have this story on, there it is, on the list I was looking around for. All right, well, where is this?
Busy reading. I was just,
okay.
just picking stuff up as I go along.
Absolutely.
Now, Ed Greenberger, who posted this, is an Emmy and Murrow Award-winning and losing news anchor.
Okay.
So, it seems like a reliable source.
I mean, except for the winning part. Yeah. All right. Well, that seemed like an awfully risky strategy to say you are a professor somewhere. That seems easy to check if you haven't been.
Right. And then I'll this is a final one just because it's so funny. Now, Paula Reid from CBS News has been one of the better people in terms of asking and insisting that Trump ask and answer questions at his press conferences.
Right.
So this is a little clip of Paula Reid saying, and it's posted by CBS News, Paula Reid, do you have any concerns about President Trump using hydroxychloroquine directed to Dr. Birx? Dr. Birx's answer is, isn't it great it's not going to rain for the next 3 days?
So, yes. That's good.
Yes, that's pretty good. And that's why, of course, I think Birx should resign. But, I've said that before.
Yes.
And there's nothing about this that changes my mind about that.
Yeah. By the way, watch and see if it rains. I mean...
Yeah.
I think she's right about the predictions. It won't be her fault. That's her dodge, and it won't work.
All right, so we're going to do some polling before and after the break here. Do you want to do pandemic polling, or do you want to do political polling?
Yes, please.
Okay, well, let's stick with the pandemic polling and just finish that off.
Yeah, why not?
Since we're on the topic. Nick Gorovich, who is the pollster, one of the pollster people for Navigator Surveys, doing a daily tracker. They're now going to be a weekly tracker publishing Wednesday. Today's Wednesday, and here it is.
Take even more
Week
time
9
off?
of Navigator Survey tracking poll. Trump approval for handling a pandemic at a new low, 40% approved, 56% disapproved, with approval at 11% with Democrats, 32% with independents, and 77% with Republicans, which is, by the way, low.
Yeah.
70, you're supposed to be at 90.
Yes. It's so low that they're going to even be doing less Navigator surveys, apparently. They're tired
47% report hearing mostly negative things about Trump's handling versus 17% who say mostly positive and 32% mixed. The negative conversation on Trump has been around reopening, testing, masks, ignoring experts, and this all happened before the hydroxychloroquine declaration.
Yes.
Okay, so reopen, but in a negative way. On reopening, 35% think their state is moving too quickly, 41% say they're getting the timing right, and 17% not quickly enough. In states that the respondents say are more open than closed, plurality say things are moving too quickly.
Okay.
So people are happy with the states that aren't opening and not so happy with the states that are. And remember, there's going to be a lag time, 2 weeks or so before you start to see cases go up, 4 weeks before you start to see ICU cases and such, hospitalizations, and 6 weeks or so before you start to see deaths.
Yes.
So the whole idea that you open and then 3 days later, oh, look at that, it was a mistake. If you start to see rising numbers 3 days after you reopen, then it's probably just a symbol and a sign that the lack of CDC presence up until now has given us mixed ability to actually count cases properly, and maybe I'll mention that a little bit. And with all that's going on around the country with reopening, still pretty clear that people are more concerned about social distancing ending too soon, 58%, than it is going on too long, 32%. Now, who do you trust? 58% say Fauci, 27% say Trump, not close. And trust in Fauci and CDC are still incredibly strong, despite the right's attempt to polarize attitudes on both. By the way, I'll just add, that's going to be true with mail-in voting. That is a losing topic for Trump, even though he's pushing it because he wants to do voter suppression because it's the only way he can win.
Yeah.
70% trust Fauci to tell the truth. Fauci numbers eroding only a bit with GOP voters, 65 to 60, but still very strong. Coverage reopening often presents the issue as a political vulnerability for Democrats, but here we see Democratic governors largely seen as getting it right, and huge numbers think Trump and GOP in Congress getting it wrong. For two-thirds of America, the key to restarting the economy is resolving the health crisis. And we tested a bunch of different ways to talk about reopening. The most resonant statement links the health and the economy, noting it'll prolong the economic crisis if we don't do the health thing.
If you don't have your health.
For something, don't have health, don't have economy. For something a bit different than we do in our normal polls, we showed respondents images in the news of people gathering in various places. The reaction to those images was crystal clear. 84% say the people in those images are acting irresponsibly. Like, put your pants on tweet that I mentioned.
Right.
And 16% say responsibly. So weekly from now on, but they will publish individual nuggets over the course of the week if they find it especially interesting.
Yes.
Now, this is at a time that Texas, Georgia, and Florida's numbers are all being questioned for various and sundry reasons, including firing the Florida person responsible for the numbers.
Yeah.
This is important because we're all looking to see those three states because they're active, aggressive reopeners.
Right. They appear
Unfortunately, we don't really have accurate data to judge them by.
No, and even the inaccurate data we're getting doesn't suggest a downward trend. So that's pretty interesting. I can't believe they didn't fake that. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Time for the Happy News segment. Is that what we were calling it, Greg?
Yeah, when we get there.
All right. Well,
now, this is an interesting piece that Olivier Knox, who was the past president of the White House Correspondents Association, sent me from the Detroit Free Press, pointing out that this is going to be a political battle over these absentee ballots.
Yes.
Secretary of State, all Michigan voters will get absentee ballot applications at home.
Right.
Benson, in a move likely to anger some Republicans and potentially lead to court battles, said the threat posed by the spread of coronavirus, which has already killed nearly 5,000 Michiganders since March, but has been on the decline in recent weeks, is still too great to consider having people go en masse to the polls to vote in the August 4th and November 3rd elections. Benson's a Democrat. By mailing applications, we ensured no Michigander has to choose between their health and the right to vote, which, by the way, is a very popular thing to say. But some Republicans, including Trump, who won Michigan by less than 0.2%, say the vote have argued against widespread voting by mail, and there's no indication of widespread fraud. Michigan holds its primary election August 4th, but there could be a legal challenge despite the fact that she and some local clerks sent out unsolicited absentee ballots for voters for the May 5th local elections. While Michigan changed its rules 2 years ago to allow anybody to vote by absentee ballot for any reason, it's possible an argument may be made in the May 5th election was disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic and Whitmer's stay-at-home order to contain it, and it's not clear that the threat may be as pronounced as the orders. And it's possible opponents of such a move could try to use past legal decisions like a 2008 Michigan Court of Appeals decision involving the Macomb County clerk that ruled against her sending absentee ballot applications to every voter over the age of 60. Now, that was a local clerk, and it was election laws expressly under the legislator's control. And so I don't know if that matters, but somebody will use it.
Yes, I'm sure.
Just there's, you read the story, as there's less there than meets the eye. Let's just say that. Okay. So anyway, so that's what's going on here. And I think it's important to note that Trump is doing so badly in the polls that he's fairly desperate to try and work out what's going on with voter suppression, because he's seeing that as the only path to winning. For example, here's an article by John Halpin and Roy Teixeira in the Washington Post. Trump-Biden voters could decide the 2020 election. 9% of Trump's 2016 voters say they're planning to vote for Biden.
Yes.
Okay? And that's half of that number are Clinton-Trump voters.
Clinton-Trump.
Right? So more people, twice as many people are moving away from Trump as toward Trump.
Okay.
Because you're going to get some people that voted for Clinton and then for whatever reason are voting for Trump. I have no idea why. But there will be people that do that.
Okay. Sure.
Right? But many more people are moving from Trump to Biden.
Yeah.
So net win for Trump. Trump-Biden voters' views may be summarized as progressive on economics and moderate to conservative on social issues. On healthcare, they support a public option for government health insurance at 70%, and less than half support a Medicare for all proposal. So the argument that some people have made that the thing about Biden is that he's more likely to get moderate voters, older voters, male voters, all of the things that were an issue in the primary and an argument to be made about why even consider Biden over, let's say, Bernie, turn out to be true.
Oh. Well, now what am I going to do?
Well, we know what we're going to do now because the primary's over.
Oh, yes,
The Bernie argument was that, but we're going to get new people to vote. And that's also going to be true. But they didn't show up in the primary. Will they show up in the general election? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe because Trump might mobilize them. But here's the thing. There's other data. I don't have this in front of me, but I read this the other day from Matt Grossman.
Oh, sure.
Political scientist.
All right, well,
that anger, and I think we talked about this on the show before because of work done by non-white pollsters who look at stuff like this. Oh. Anger motivates white people. White people have privilege. They can afford to be angry.
Oh, yes, all right.
Anger does not motivate non-white voters. Non-white voters know everybody's racist.
Okay.
Some are nicer to you than others.
Feels like anger.
But there's no point in getting angry because it's not a surprise.
Okay.
And besides, you can't afford to be angry. That doesn't get anything done.
That's certainly true.
So very pragmatic voters. And so if you want to motivate non-white voters, you do it with pride. Obama being the first black president was a big frickin' deal.
Yeah.
And that says something about who Biden may pick as his vice presidential candidate. By the way, that's why Kamala Harris, for example, is one of the leading candidates and a better argument for her than, let's say, Amy Klobuchar, who has her own arguments, which is the moderate to conservative vote that you're trying to sew up. But it looks like Biden already has that. So I'm just saying that this all fits into a pattern. And when you look at it, that's the theoretical basis for it. How's it working out in real life? Let me give you some examples, and this is directly from the Pundit Roundup. There's a Jeffrey Skelly 538 piece, Are Older Voters Turning Away from Trump? The most startling shift is among voters 65 and older. 4 years ago, Trump bested Hillary Clinton by 13 points, 55 to 42, but now Biden narrowly leads Trump 48-47, based on an average of 48 national polls that included that age group. If those figures hold until November, that would represent a seismic shift in the voting behavior of America's oldest voters. The last Democratic nominee who won voters 65 and older was Al Gore.
Okay.
And those are older Americans who came of age in the New Deal and the Great Depression and were still Democrats.
The new older voters are old enough to remember when old voters voted for Al Gore.
Yeah, well, newer older voters are old enough to remember when they voted for Ronald Reagan.
Oh.
But at the same time, they are moving away from the Republicans and to the Democrats. And to that, I only have one comment, and that's, okay, Boomer.
All right.
I mean, really, okay. It's really okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We're okay with that.
We're okay with that. Now, there are people who still can't get over
There are
2016. And to them, I say, at this point in 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 3 with a volatile electorate. But this year, things look a lot more stable. Joe Biden maintaining his lead nationally and state by state. Not a surprise. As, wait for it, the state and national polls correlate.
Oh.
So here's a pro tip.
They should.
Stop dismissing national polls. Well, they don't tell us anything. It's the election. Look, if the national polls are big, states are going to follow because that's how the national polls get big.
Okay. I mean, the complaint at this point is if there were no state polls going on.
So here's your state polling roundup for those who can't bring themselves to look at national polls,
Fine.
is what I wrote this morning.
Oh.
Okay. Political polls. Arizona, Biden 50, Trump 43. Florida, head-to-head, Biden 52, Trump 48. And with a third party, Biden 45, Trump 44, third party 4. Right. Virginia, Biden 51, Trump 39. We love Virginia. We love everybody in Virginia, and especially a few people we love in Virginia.
Yes. Me.
Yes. Biden 51, Trump 39. Good job, Virginia. Georgia,
You're welcome.
New Georgia poll by Civics. President Biden, Democrat 48, Trump 47. In the Senate, Ossoff 47, Perdue 45. Special runoff, Warnock, Democrat 45, Doug Collins 44. And G. Elliott Morris looks at all of this data and says this plus the Arizona poll today, which, by the way, Mark Kelly's running away from Martha McSally. This and the Arizona poll today make clear that Trump is a huge underdog for November, and narratives otherwise are not supported by the data. Now, this is not a surprise for anybody who listens to this show. I've been saying this for weeks.
Right.
Trump is not the favorite. He's never been the favorite. He's been a slight underdog, but that underdogness is getting worse here for him and better for Biden because all these polls are pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And he's choking like an underdog.
Now, it's so remarkable that I'm starting to see arguments on Twitter, which I find semi-amusing. Okay. A legitimate counterpoint, I wrote, is that thanks to the pandemic and the economic depression, anybody can beat Trump. So, you can't look at Biden's lead and say, see, he was the best candidate.
Okay. That'll make some people happy. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's not how it looked a few months
exactly,
ago,
but
I would say, and not one I agree with, is Trump still has a narrow path to victory, so it's not true that anybody could beat him.
Oh.
But it's an argument I don't mind listening to.
Yeah. Just for fun, can we all walk around saying
it means that Trump is losing, so that's okay. You want to argue that? I'm good with that.
Right.
That, because the general impression is still with the public that no matter what, Trump's still going to win because look what happened in 2016, so I don't trust my own judgment.
Yeah, well, things are crazy.
I'm trying to get you to overcome that. Gravity matters.
Yes. I think probably most people who pressed on it would then say, well, but he'll just cheat. And maybe.
Yeah, but our emails.
Right.
But he'll cheat, exactly. So another thing here, you hear a lot about Trump's super stable approval rating, says Benji Sarlin, but I've never seen much of a dive into how the generic congressional ballot has looked like 2018 pretty much continuously. Oh. And you look at that graph there, which I'm going to send you, and it turns out it looks very much like Joe Biden's lead.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just train tracks.
Right. They remain more or less the same distance apart. They wave up and down
for
within
months,
a point.
months. Yeah. Biden's lead is super stable too. Now, speaking of Arizona,
very stable.
In the Ohio Predictive Insights, and Ohio Predictive Insights is a Republican firm, the same one that shows that I think was it Biden +7 in Arizona. Mark Kelly 51, Martha McSally 38.
Ohio
She's doing
Predictive Insights in Arizona.
Says pollster Mike P. Noble. And you know what? She's a terrible candidate. Dave Hopkins, the political scientist, says the margin in this poll is an outlier, but it's clear for the second straight election that Martha McSally is a better candidate on paper than in the real world. GOP political consultants love her because she's the first female commander of an Air Force fighter squadron.
Oh, I see.
Voters don't agree.
They don't think she was?
They don't think she's so great.
Okay. I'm all for, making a creative argument, but she was that.
Right.
All right.
So Paul Waldman points out Republicans are serious about voter suppression and talks about how to stop them.
Okay.
And I think that's worth looking at.
Yes.
But I told you that the data about that pandemic stuff is a little hard to believe. This is Jim Kennedy tweeting. This is all in the pundit roundup. This is outrageous. Rebecca Jones, the manager of Florida's COVID-19 dashboard, has been involuntarily removed from her position because she refused to censor some data to, in her own words, drum up support for the plan to reopen.
Yes.
In Texas, is Texas inflating its COVID-19 testing numbers by including antibody tests, which are different than the antigen test to see if you have disease.
I see.
The antibody tests are blood tests to see if you had disease in the past. And the state health department is including some antibody test results in the case totals, potentially clouding information on the current spread of the virus.
Interesting, because it boosts the number of cases that they're reporting.
Exactly,
But,
without having positive cases and so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay, so I guess...
It boosts the number of cases reporting without them being sick.
Yeah, right, so then they'll be able to say, well, okay, there aren't more people getting it.
So our tests are only
today.
7% positive.
Yeah, well, that is interesting. I mean, you want to know,
Georgia.
But yeah, you want
Georgia,
to...
by order of Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, the day after Thursday is Sunday.
Yes.
Only in Brian Kemp's Georgia is the first Thursday in May followed immediately by the last Sunday in April.
Right.
And only in President Trump's America would we have the producers of such flim-flam leading the reopening on our national economy. In other words, the numbers go down because you misorder the days to make it look like the numbers go down and not up.
Yeah. Well,
The governor's office apologized for what state Republican Scott Holcomb and Atlanta Democrat properly called a cuckoo presentation. But as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution noted, it was the third such error in 3 weeks.
Really? I didn't know that.
Another official state chart
amazing.
continues to show cases dropping dramatically over 14 days, with an asterisk explaining that confirmed cases over the last 14 days may not be accounted for due to illnesses yet to be reported.
I see.
Florida
All right.
only reports
that's true.
state data. They don't report private cases. And there's been accusations that Florida is muzzling the coroners so that they can't report cases as well and deaths. So there's a whole lot going on there that makes you suspect that the numbers are suspect.
Yes.
And it's difficult if the numbers are being massaged in order to make the Republican governors look better. It's really difficult to have much faith in what's going to happen. And again, over the next 4 to 6 weeks, it's not going to be quick. But
No,
Italy's starting to
and
see
you might not-
resurgence of cases now that they've opened.
Are they?
And there's other places that have done the same thing. France reported problems once they
yes.
reopened the schools. The idea that children don't get sick is ridiculous. Now there's this outbreak of multi-system organ disease throughout the country. It's something to continue to take seriously, as most Americans do, and many Republicans don't. And again, that's bad medically, it's bad for public health, but it's also going to have political ramifications in the fall. That breaks through everything. Because right now, as bad as Trump's numbers are, they're being held up by Republicans who say, well, they were probably exaggerating. If it turns out that's not the case, collapse. And remember, your poll collapse only when your own party's ready to reject you. If they don't, you'll still remain with a floor that will prop you up a little bit. In this case, not enough to win with.
Well, this doesn't set up particularly well for them. I have my doubts about whether they'll, a whole lot of them will ever come to realize that they have been misled.
But if they don't, they lose.
But it is a
if
long time.
If they do, then they lose more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the good news, I suppose. And it's a long
Meanwhile,
time.
Democrats are becoming more confident about winning the Senate.
Good. We should.
Because they're not Teflon Don. They can't do this. Brian Kemp is even more unpopular than Donald Trump, and that's really hard to do for a governor.
Yes. And he's responsible for Kelly Loeffler. It's rubbing off. Okay.
Who's also, in a bit of trouble there.
Right.
So
not enough.
We have all of that. And let me finish.
Yes.
Let me just finish here.
Would you let me?
Andy Rooney, let me just finish here.
Oh, I was thinking Ross Perot. They're both cantankerous.
McSweeney's has a wonderful short piece here.
How?
Called
Short?
New York Times Style Guide Substitutions for the President Lied.
Okay.
And they suggest, it's not that long, so it's easy to read. And they suggest things that the New York Times can and should and are doing.
Yes.
For example, the president, offering no evidence, insisted upon his version of the story.
I like that.
The president extemporized with a blithe disregard for established fact. Confounding experts and antagonizing the historical record, the president painted his own rosier portrait of events.
They would write that. They would. These are
Yes.
legit suggestions.
The president, perhaps inadvertently, wound up smudging the line between empirical verification and his own boundless optimism.
That's for a long think piece. Yes, all right.
The president once again found himself galloping ahead of reality's leisurely pace.
Interesting.
The president dabbled anew in the shallow pond of misrepresentation, filling his beak with succulent morsels hidden among the reeds.
Wow.
This is just hysterical, because the Times folks would write these things.
Yeah.
The president's recent encounter with the specter of honesty caught him wrong-footed. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and the president took the one less truthful.
I don't know. That's dangerously close to the line.
This is my favorite, though. They end with this. It's just so perfectly New York Times. Mrs. Clinton lied. The president followed suit.
Through no fault of his own.
It's subtle, but it's exactly what they would write. Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right. Okay, McSweeney's. The shorter the better, it turns out, for them. That's rare.
Yes, but there's some great pieces there.
Yeah. I don't even understand exactly what the place
I love
says.
the one about filling his beak with succulent morsels hidden among the reeds, especially if you're a bird watcher,
Right.
And waterfowl are near your house or something. You get to see them. It's great. But anyway, so that's it. That's my summary for today. The world is crazy. Trump is doing these things. Politically, they're not working.
Good.
A nothing burger continent on which other nothing burgers are built upon.
Yeah.
And he's going to do them anyway. And just remember, only white people get angry or can afford to get angry.
Yeah, are allowed. True.
Right? And go back and think of Obama's presidency and how angry we white people were that he wasn't getting angry at the Republicans.
Yeah, that was...
I wonder why that is. But at the time we said, our friends told us that that's a white privilege thing to get angry.
Yeah, and they were right. It was too bad that he wasn't afforded the privilege, but... and we had to do it. But, yeah, well, good point.
But if that's the case, then that's our job. So we're supposed to get angry.
Yeah.
Now, Mac Grossman makes the point that you got to be careful with anger because, again, white people tend to vote Republican as a whole, as a group, even if slightly. It's rare that the Democratic president candidate wins the white vote. Yes?
That's what I'm
It
told.
just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
What you have to do, you have to keep the Republican white vote margin lower, but it's not like the Democrat usually wins the white vote. In fact, just the opposite. Therefore, it follows that if you get white people angry, that tends to help Republicans.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know whether...
That's why Trump is doing his best to get people angry.
Right.
That's the whole thing about Obamagate. And that he was born in Kenya and all that stuff is going to come up again because we got to get our base angry and rile them up. Otherwise, they won't vote.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to go that
you have to understand that. And don't get angry about it. Get even.
Okay.
Don't get mad. Organize.
I mean, you can get angry. Just don't get other crazy white people angry.
Yeah. Don't waste your time yelling at them. That doesn't help. That just convinces them to vote when they were about to sit down on the sideline.
Maybe. How can we offer them chairs?
You've heard that from me before. It's not... There are people you can persuade. 9% of Trump voters are going to vote for Biden. There are people you can persuade. We know that. Look at the 36 or 37%, 36% I think it was in that recent poll that said that they believe Trump, and 45% support him in terms of his job approval. They know he's lying.
Yeah.
Okay? So maybe they're persuadable, but don't go out of your way to stick them in the eye with a pole or a stick. Don't poke them in the eye with a stick. It's not worth it. You don't get anything for that. It's satisfying to you. You get to yell and rant and stuff like that, but you're not persuading anybody. Don't do that. Be like the New York Times. Be a little bit more subtle.
I guess so. You can just tell
the president
people.
Once again found himself galloping ahead of reality's leisurely pace. That's all you have to say. You don't have to call him a liar.
Can you say that about those people? You're galloping ahead. Oh no, you're the one galloping ahead.
Okay, but that's not the kind of thing that motivates people to go out and vote because that guy on Twitter was mean to me. Just tell them that they're dabbling anew in the shallow pond of misrepresentation, filling their beak with succulent morsels hidden among the reeds, and see how they react to that.
It'll be interesting. You might be able to pick apart the actual people and the Russian bots from that. I don't know how the Russian bots react to that. I don't think they taught them those words.
Right. just tell them that they're extemporizing with a blithe disregard for established fact. That's all. I didn't call you a liar.
Yeah. I noticed you left the quantum physicists out of this one.
Well, that's a long one. But, quantum physicists posit the existence of infinite universes, so it is entirely within reason that one or more such contain the timeline described by the president, and we look forward to seeing it, or not seeing it, as the case may be.
Yes. Well,
because to look may make it go away.
Right. Better that you leave it
edited
closed.
That last part.
All right. Well, I think it's accurate. Probably would be agreed with by most quantum physicists who are willing to
quantum physicists are monitoring Schrodinger's truth here.
Or they're not.
Or not.
We don't know for sure.
We don't really know.
At any given point, they might not be. So.
All right. And with that, I may or may not be getting off the show.
It could happen. Okay. We won't open the box. We'll just, record what's observable.
That's what you should do. Here's the podcast. Download it, but don't listen because I may or may not have been on it.
This may or may not have been the greatest episode ever, but you don't want to ruin it. So
you don't want to ruin it by listening.
And now I know.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That's good for a laugh. Biden's doing pretty well, and all you people who said he wasn't going to do well, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd mention that.
You're right. And enjoy your succulent morsels. You wrong.
But I didn't really say that. If you didn't listen to the show, you didn't hear me anyway.
No. Right. So you're still in good standing with them. Okay.
I was never in good standing with them, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, we're supposed to try to make them sit anyhow.
Yep.
That much
anyway,
matters.
Take care. Vote for Biden. Don't vote for Trump. Take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Good timing. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see what happens.
You may or may not see me tomorrow at usually more or less the same time, or not.
Will or won't see what happens. We're not sure.
Take care.
Okay, thanks. You do the same, and onward with the rest of Wednesday, which by my measure is just wasting an hour until you get back here and tell us what happened in the rest of the day. That's the way I like to look at it. Okay, all right, into Pocket and the Twitter feed and see what other craziness is circulating here. Let's see. There's definitely a few things we need to catch up on. I didn't mean to spend more time on hydroxychloroquine because we can't really tell whether or not he's actually taking it. But I did want to note for the record, I saw on Twitter last night that the president, having insisted that he's been taking hydroxychloroquine for some time, I think he said a week and a half, without telling anybody for whatever reason, has apparently prompted Sebastian Gorka, of course no longer with the administration, but now a right-wing radio show having lunatic, has apparently also announced that, oh yeah, well, me too. I also have secretly and without announcement been taking hydroxychloroquine. I don't know if the president's going to really like this one. He says he's been taking it for more than a month, and that's going to show up Trump, though maybe it's okay because it means that Trump convinced me a month ago to do it, and as a loyal soldier, I started taking it even before the president did, but at the president's word. I don't know what he thinks he's going to get out of it. In both cases, I guess the only somewhat interesting nugget to take away from all of this is that in both cases, Trump and Gorka, and God knows who else is going to come out of the woodwork next, are claiming to have been taking hydroxychloroquine as a preventative measure, as a prophylactic, which, and I guess this is what makes the story so rich, despite the fact that it's almost certainly not as it's being reported. Either he's, one or both of them is lying about taking it at all, or they're lying about why they're taking it. That could be a possibility. I actually, have been exposed and have a positive test result, and so I'm taking this in as a Hail Mary on so that I don't die or become hospitalized, or the whole thing's a lie. I'm not sure which. It's just kind of interesting. And it struck me also, even though Sebastian Gorka is, well, no one cares about him, And honestly, if he was taking it, that'd be fantastic, because I'm waiting for some of the dangers to kick in. This is where I think the lie might be part of this play. If neither of them drop dead, they'll be able to say, well, to the extent that you believed that we were taking hydroxychloroquine, doesn't that prove that this is a workable solution, or at least won't kill you? Except if they're not taking it, then you don't really have data on that. And all you have is the experts telling you that, yes, out of the public eye, other people have been administered hydroxychloroquine by doctors who are measuring their progress, and they die. And so you can choose to believe that or not at your leisure, I guess. Anyway, what struck me last night, of course, that those Sebastian Gorka is no longer in the administration, I began to wonder also how many other people might be taking hydroxychloroquine at the president's insistence. And I'm curious about whether any members of his family are taking it. I mean, that'd be interesting if he's saying, I'm taking hydroxychloroquine, but Ivanka and Jared and Don Jr. aren't. I think we'd all be interested in knowing that and knowing why. That'd be interesting to have them explain. But it struck me that if they are taking it, and thinking about how Sebastian Gorka used to be in the administration, these guys are all running out to whatever doctor they can find to ask for a prescription for an off-label use of this drug that's chiefly at this point being pushed for this reason by marketing executives and not doctors. And it struck me that they were abusing this prescription drug at the behest of marketing executives. And all the while, these are the people who are supposed to be apparently in charge of supposedly fixing our country's opioid problem, and they're walking down the exact same path. Granted, I think hydroxychloroquine hasn't got any reason to think that it's addictive at all, certainly not the same way as opioids, but just again, a dangerous disregard for the way drugs are supposed to be used. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. All right, let's see. I got to move on to a couple of the other things here, and let me put this aside and see if I can follow along on more of these. Is Trump still on his tear about this? I got a couple of other interesting things to grab onto here. Let me put a few stories in the queue along the way. I know this is very interesting to you, I'm sure. What's Trump on about now? Is this new stuff? Okay, I guess since the show started, it's new anyway. Apparently, this is happening all over the place. State of Nevada thinks, and that's in quotes here. This is Trump saying it, tweeting it. State of Nevada thinks that they can send out illegal vote-by-mail ballots, creating a great voter fraud scenario for the state and the U.S. They can't. If they do, I think, scare quotes again, I can hold up funds to the state. Sorry, but you must not cheat in elections. I don't know what Nevada is actually thinking of doing, or whether they're sending applications just like Michigan, but he does seem to be losing his mind more than usual, perhaps, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, everyone's yelling at him that he's crazy, and of course reminding him that he also, naturally, votes by absentee ballot, and presumably had to fill out an application to get one as well, although I'm sure he had his people fill them out. But at any rate, no point in pointing out at this point that he's being hypocritical about anything. That's simply not where our focus ought to be. Anyway, as I mentioned, lots of people getting off-label usage of hydroxychloroquine, many of whom I assume are supposed to be in charge of making sure that nobody does that with opioids. Did lead to the question of who else is taking it, but that we don't have answers for. That I'd like to see the press ask today. They seem to love the hydroxychloroquine story, so as long as they love it so much, we might as well make use of it and have them ask, is Ivanka taking it? Is Jared taking it? Is Mike Pence taking it? Who else is taking it? We need to know the answers. I guess they can ask everybody now. and either they can all start lying or they can all start dying from hydroxychloroquine. I would take either at this point. I have no control over this. But I guess if the answer is no, then you really have something to latch onto for a stupid story for the rest of the day, and everyone will get excited about that. Why aren't they taking it? And it'd be interesting to see him try and explain that, and I have no doubt that there would be plenty to make fun of in his answer. Anyway, I guess the next question is, who's saying you can take this? And they have their answer now, or at least The Guardian offers one answer. Sean Conley. He's the doctor who agreed to Trump taking hydroxychloroquine. I guess he's the White House doctor. The U.S. Navy veteran who is qualified in osteopathic medicine concluded that the potential benefit outweighed the risks, which is interesting because I'm not certain what the potential benefit is supposed to be if you don't have a positive diagnosis. But I guess he's now in the business of prescribing it as a prophylactic, which is a new and even more ambitious off-label use for the drug. Sean Conley, the doctor who acceded to Donald Trump's request to be given a drug unproven to treat the coronavirus, which he says he doesn't have, they should note, is a U.S. Navy veteran and is qualified in osteopathic medicine. So he is a doctor, but mind you, osteopathic medicine, it is its own sort of separate branch of study, although these days they pretty much study more or less the same things and are qualified to practice the same way as any other medical doctor, but it's an interesting distinction that still exists. Conley, who is from Pennsylvania, graduated from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in 2006 and went on to undertake a medical residency at the Navy base in Virginia. Well, a Navy base in Virginia, it doesn't say which one. He was then deployed to Afghanistan, where he acted as head of a trauma unit at a NATO base. The medical unit at the White House is typically staffed by doctors drawn from the U.S. military, and Conley found himself in line to become the president's own physician after the departure of Ronnie Jackson, who had previously raised eyebrows by praising Trump's, quote, good genes, and for saying that if the president had had a healthier diet over the last 20 years, he might live to be 200 years old, which is a remarkable thing for a medical professional to allow to come out of his mouth. Jackson had also sparked a short-lived girther conspiracy movement after reporting Trump's weight at 239 pounds, just 1 pound below a threshold that would classify the president as obese, which of course he is, because he's not 239 pounds. Trump sleeps just 4 or 5 hours a night, doesn't exercise outside of rounds of golf, and rides in a cart when he does that, and is fond of McDonald's, but is fit enough for a second term, Jackson reported in 2018. That's a far cry from living to 200, but all right. The position of presidential physician, formally established by Congress in 1928, is usually a low-profile and uneventful one. Daniel Ruge, R-U-G-E, I don't know how he pronounces that, had to care for Ronald Reagan after the then president was shot in 1981. That would be exciting. I mean, bad news, but exciting. But he still described the job as, quote, vastly overrated, boring, and not medically challenging. So it's not necessarily the case that you have the best doctors in America caring for the president on a day-to-day basis. Ruge, R-U-G-E, recalled having little to do for his only patient, that would have been then President Ronald Reagan, just to remind you, spending state dinners in his office, wearing formal dress, doing crossword puzzles in case an emergency arose. Conley, who became the president's physician in May of 2018, had also largely steered clear of public attention until Trump's extraordinary claim that he has been taking hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial drug. Just to jump back to Ronnie Jackson, who also, I guess, properly should have stayed out of the public eye, not only dove right in, but is now, he left the White House to run for Congress, which is a bit unusual. Trump has repeatedly touted the drug as a treatment for COVID-19, despite it not having gone through any clinical trials or approvals for this use. Again, a treatment for COVID-19, which he says he does not have. The Food and Drug Administration has warned against taking the drug outside a clinical trial or emergency hospital intervention, citing potential heart problems. Despite these warnings and the fact that Trump has not tested positive, allegedly, for COVID-19, I added the allegedly, they should have, Conley wrote a memo stating that following discussions with the president, they concluded that, quote, the potential benefit from treatment outweighed the relative risks, unquote, of taking hydroxychloroquine. That's remarkable. Conley also confirmed in the memo that Trump is in good health. That may or may not be true. I wonder if the relative risks included getting fired as White House doctor. I don't know. It doesn't say what those relative risks are. Describing his consultation with Conley, Trump said on Monday, I asked him, what do you think? He said, well, if you'd like it. I said, yeah, I'd like it. I'd like to take it. And then, of course, they asked him, what's the evidence you have that it's effective for any reason and not dangerous? Here's my evidence. I get a lot of positive calls about it, the president added. So far, I seem to be okay, which is actually what leads me to believe that he's not really taking it. All right. I think we're all on the same page on that one, but just thought I'd give you an update on the doctor's name and a little bit about his background and what he was and wasn't willing to say about this, and then we'll see what happens and who to blame for it later on. Okay, let's see. As Greg mentioned, early data coming in from the various states in terms of the results of their reopening experiment, but it might be too soon to definitively say how terrible they really are. But the Hill has an article on the subject, and I guess they're culling from a Times piece here, New York Times. Texas, North Carolina, and Arizona are among the states seeing rising numbers of coronavirus cases, intensifying concerns as they seek to reopen shuttered economies. Texas saw its largest one-day increase in cases on Saturday, with 1,801 new cases. We did take note of that, I think, on Monday. North Carolina also saw its largest single-day jump on Saturday with 853 new cases, and Arizona reported 462 new cases that day, close to a record high. The 7-day average in new cases in all three states has also been rising, according to data compiled by the New York Times, which we'll just pause then to say that was in states that are being more cautious, as I guess we can say we are being here in Virginia, although I think perhaps not cautious enough. And by the way, those of you not based in Virginia may not know that I think I mentioned it though, the governor of Virginia has given his assent to the region, the Northern Virginia region, to cooperate between counties and independent municipalities surrounded by those counties to open more slowly, because the virus has just been that much more concentrated and dangerous in the Northern Virginia region. But down south, things are loosening up a lot faster, and I guess it makes a certain amount of sense given that the southern portion of Virginia borders on North Carolina, which is also opening. All right. Well, at any rate, the Virginia opening was originally supposed to be tied to this rolling average in new cases so that you spread it out more and you're not depending on spikes. And we were supposed to be seeing a 14-day downward trend in all of these statistics, and not open until we saw it. And it's not entirely clear that Virginia has seen it, but we're going ahead anyway. Here, Texas and North Carolina and Arizona completely ignored that guideline. The 7-day average in new cases is on the rise, but they're opening anyway. That's, the opposite of the advice that we get from the medical professionals. But who cares about them, right? The data illustrate the risk of states reopening even amid ongoing outbreaks. Texas and Arizona are both relatively far along in reopening, having given the green light to businesses like restaurants and barber shops, though they have cautioned to open with limited capacity and other safety measures. North Carolina is less far down the road toward opening, but has entered its first phase, allowing retail stores to open with precautions. Texas and Arizona are both led by Republican governors. North Carolina has a Democratic governor. One reason for the increasing numbers of cases in all three states is more people are giving each other the virus. But what do they say? It is that they are all seeing a significant rise in testing. That's their excuse, which means more people carrying COVID-19 are being identified. With more testing, we expect to see more cases. North Carolina Health and Human Services Secretary Mandy Cohen said on Monday at a news conference. Still, she called the increase in her state concerning and noted that it comes as restrictions are being eased. When we see this kind of an increase in case counts, we also know that we are easing restrictions and folks are moving around more, she said, urging residents to wear face coverings, keep 6 feet apart, and wash their hands as restrictions lift. Not all states that are reopening are seeing increased numbers of coronavirus cases, and there are significant variations across the country as states move forward with various phases of reopening. Georgia, one of the earliest states to start reopening, says here has not seen a spike in cases and, in fact, had a slight decrease. Florida, similarly, has been mostly flat. Those are, of course, the two states about which we are most worried that their numbers aren't true. Yet, even this needs to be taken with some caveats. Because it takes time for someone with the coronavirus to develop symptoms and get tested, it can take 2 weeks for new cases to show up in the data. Nationally, there are some hopeful signs of a decline in new cases, but that trend masks significant regional variation. New York and New Jersey, once by far the epicenter of infections in the United States, have seen significant declines in new cases in recent weeks, but other states like Texas and Arizona are seeing those increases. Spokesman for Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, both Republicans, both pointed to their states increasing in testing as a factor to explain the increases in cases. Both states have fairly low positivity rates on their testing. That's a favorable sign. Rates in both states are about 5%, down significantly from the rates in April. North Carolina's positivity rate has been steady at around 6%. Texas has said about 700 of the cases in its spike of 1,800 over the weekend came from targeted testing of meatpacking plants in 2 counties. That's actually not that good news. Good news for the general population in that they're not already infected. Bad news in that all their food comes from people who are. All 3 states are also not seeing problems with hospital capacity. That's a key metric. Still, reopening the economy will likely lead to increases in cases. All the experts say that as people interact more and spread the virus. It's not surprising we're seeing more reported cases given that we've started to reopen. People are more mobile and we're doing a lot more testing. Same thing, right? We're also doing more testing. That's according to Aaron McKethan. Maybe we've pronounced his name right. A senior policy fellow at Duke Margolis Center for Health Policy. Anthony Fauci, we know who he is, of course, warned in high-profile Senate testimony last week of serious consequences and spikes if states reopen too soon. Experts also noted, however, that a balance needs to be struck between public health and the economy, given that stay-at-home orders cannot last forever. If we were only looking at public health considerations, we would, of course, maintain lockdown indefinitely, but that's not feasible, McKethan said. Michael Mina, professor at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, said he thinks the country is on the brink of societal collapse if it does not reopen the economy soon, though he noted concerns from a health standpoint. Thanks for doing so. Myself and many of my colleagues are very nervous about this idea of opening up this early without the right pieces in place, but it does need to happen, Mina said. One of those key pieces is testing. Ideally, as in countries like South Korea, the number of cases overall will be low enough that new sparks can be stamped out through rigorous testing and contact tracing around emerging outbreaks. While the situation on those fronts has been improving, there are still weaknesses. while the number of tests nationwide has climbed to about 350,000 per day recently. Harvard researchers estimated the country needs at least 900,000 tests per day earlier this month. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, also Republican, noted the tensions around reopening on Sunday on CNN's State of the Union, saying his state is at a plateau in new cases when he would rather see a decline. This is really probably the most crucial time, the most dangerous time, because we are opening back up, because we have to open back up, he said. But at the same time, that creates more exposure, more opportunity for this virus to spread. Interesting to see that coming from so many angles, including the professor at Harvard. But yeah, the problem with it is, you intuitively feel like they might be onto something, saying, it may just be the case that we just can't remain closed for any longer, except they never have anything to offer except because it really feels that way. As opposed to, we have science on the other side that says this is going to happen or is likely to happen, and we want to avoid that. Yeah, but on the other hand, lots of people feel something else. So it's a little disappointing to have the scientists doing that, but they're trying to be reasonable, which a favor is never going to be requited, by the way. There will be no concessions to reason and conciliation from the other side. So, stop trying to work with them, basically, is what I'm telling you. Stick with the science, quite honestly. All right, let's see. A few other things. Oh, yes, Greg did note, I have a report as well from CBS News, that France had experimented with reopening some of their schools. I don't think they opened the schools in the Paris area, where things are a little too concentrated for them to do that, but apparently some of the schools in the north reopened, and just a week after 1/3 of French school children went back to school in an easing of the coronavirus lockdown, there's been a worrying flare-up of about 70 COVID-19 cases linked to the schools, so they're closing again. Some schools were opened last week, and a further 150,000 junior high students went back to the classroom on Monday as further restrictions were loosened by the government. The move initially spelled relief, the end of homeschooling, of course, for many hundreds of thousands of exhausted French parents, many of whom were also working from home. But the education minister sounded the alarm on Monday, just as the junior high school kids went back, telling French radio RTL that the return has put some children in new danger of contamination. He said the affected schools are being closed immediately. French media reported that 7 schools in northern France were closed. So not all of the schools closed again, but I guess taking the, maybe prudent approach of saying, when we start making the kids sick, then we'll close those schools. At which point, later we find out, okay, we closed the schools because 7 kids were sick in this school. And then in 2 weeks, of course, you get to find out, 100 of them are sick. And then 2 weeks after that, we find out that 200 of their parents are sick, and so on and so on. All right, just noting that that's the case. Let's see. We might as well share this one, too. Another thing that I picked up due to the Hill's brilliant Twitter marketing strategy. But the original source of this is academic, so I probably won't switch over to them. I'll rely on the Hill to give us a short take on this one. Just thought I'd mention this one, so you have some tools to work with here. Some interesting studies in the last couple of days to a week and a half or so. I saw one a few days ago, and I'm sorry I didn't put it aside. I don't think so. It was Philadelphia specific in pointing out how many, I guess some experts had gotten together, how many lives do you think we saved in Philadelphia by locking down? We want an answer to that, and of course it's all sort of theoretical, and the skeptics and doubters on the other side aren't going to accept estimates from the experts, even though of course, remember that they based their entire opening argument that COVID-19 was no different from the flu on the argument that, hey, the flu kills 60,000 or more people a year, and so therefore, and we don't shut for that, so no big deal, et cetera, ignoring the time element, and also, ignoring a number of things along the way, including the fact that, well, the numbers you're using for the flu are likewise experts' opinions and estimates based on, observable factors, but they are estimates nonetheless. They pass them around as though they were hard count facts, and we learned recently that they're not. Anyway, more speculation for them to reject because they hate speculation except when they don't. Reported by Reid Wilson over at The Hill. Stay-at-home orders saved hundreds of thousands, report finds. A new analysis of nearly 250,000 people in the nation's 30 largest cities are alive today because strict stay-at-home orders issued because of those orders issued by local and state governments. 250,000 lives in the nation's 30 largest cities saved thanks to these orders. Who says so? The report from the Urban Health Collaborative at the Dornsife, I hope, Dornsife, Dornsife School of Public Health. Where is it? Drexel University. We could just, narrow it down to that. You and I just need to know. Drexel University, Philadelphia. I don't know whether they were the source of the original Philadelphia-focused comments. I may have seen the Philadelphia-focused comments tweeted out possibly by a Philadelphia person. Maybe that's what they culled out of this thing, so it might be the same study. Okay, so what do they say over at Drexel University? Stay-at-home orders likely reduced the number of coronavirus deaths by 232,878. That's a very specific number. They're not standing by the number itself, but rather the range, and prevented 2.1 million people from requiring hospitalization. So just calculate the cost of that, if you will, in your head. 2.1 million people requiring hospitalization, and think about how these people have experienced their hospitalizations with coronavirus. It's pretty intense. A lot of them end up in intensive care. A lot of them die there, but they require all sorts of specialized care, treatment, intubations, medications, therapies, the oxygen therapies. It's a very expensive stay, and they're very lengthy stays as well. A lot of people are reported staying in the hospital upwards of 3 weeks, which is an extraordinarily expensive thing, even without specialized care or any time in the ICU. Somebody with a particularly acute case, whether they survive or not, spending 3 weeks in the hospital and a lot of that time, or a significant chunk of it, in the ICU or intubated or getting intensive oxygen therapies, you could be talking about hospitalizations that cost easily $750,000 per person. Certainly upwards of $100,000, even if you're just staying in the regular, what they establish as the COVID-19 unit without going to the ICU. Times 2.1 million people, that's trillions and trillions of dollars that would have been, that were saved from being burned on coronavirus treatment simply by asking people to stay home for a while. And yes, don't get haircuts. Oh no. The analysis calculated the number of deaths caused by the coronavirus versus a model compiled by mathematicians Gabriel Goh, G-O-H, and Stephen Dekeninck, D-E-K-E-N-I-N-C-K, Dekeninck? Okay. That showed what might have happened had Americans not taken the drastic social distancing steps that governors and local elected officials have ordered and encouraged over the last few months. The figures are estimates, but they are meant to illustrate the positive effects that such sacrifices have created. We'll see whether anybody is willing to accept them. This, according to Jennifer Kolker, Associate Dean for Public Health Practice at the Dornsife School there at Drexel University. What we really wanted to do was say this matters. Doing nothing is in fact doing something. Kolker told The Hill, that is, for you to stay home and do nothing is in fact doing something. We really wanted to give city leaders the opportunity to say to their residents in their jurisdictions, hey folks, look what you did. You saved lives. You kept people out of the hospital. Well, I think we all sort of understand that intuitively. It's nice to be able to put a number to it. Not that the doubters will believe any of them, but screw them. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday. But our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. Let's take a look, continue reading this Hill article about the statistical analysis of how many people were saved, how much misery by our stay-at-home orders. I like the idea of trying to quantify it, even if stupid people will refuse to believe it. I'm sure some smart people will refuse to believe it too, but that will just be the dumbest thing that they do. Anyway, even in hard-hit areas, the article continues, like New York City, where tens of thousands of people have died, the figures could have been worse. It's hard to imagine, but they certainly could have been. Under the city's stay-at-home order, issued eventually by Mayor Bill de Blasio on March 23rd, the researchers found 24,062 lives were saved, and nearly 250,000 people who might have been hospitalized were not. And I think the hospitals in New York's hardest hit areas are probably quite grateful for that. A few people probably owe their lives to the fact that there weren't another 250,000 people sitting in the hospital with them demanding attention. In Los Angeles County, where a stay-at-home order took effect on March 19th, almost 40,000 lives were saved compared to what was likely under worst-case scenarios. More than 8,800 lives have been saved in King County, Washington, the epicenter of one of the first big coronavirus outbreaks. Philadelphia's stay-at-home order, this is the number I saw circulated, saved 6,202 lives, the analysis found, and Chicago's order has saved 10,635 lives. The analysis, conducted in conjunction with the Big Cities Health Coalition, focused on only the nation's 30 largest cities, meaning the actual number of lives saved across the nation is likely substantially higher. Early models that compared death counts if no preventative action was taken versus those that would occur under strict lockdowns showed a difference of millions of potential lives saved. Now, and I guess you should probably keep that in your back pocket too, because for the doubters who will say, oh, come on, that didn't do that, you didn't save lives in those big cities, their hero Trump will tell you, oh, well, remember when they were saying 2 million people might die, and now, well, it's only 100,000 before the end of May, but the point is it could have been so much worse. And to the extent that you're willing to credit him with that, you're going to also have to credit these estimates, because that's exactly what we're talking about. Lockdowns and how many lives they saved and what the experts say. So if Trump's going to get credit for saving 2 million lives, these mayors need to, obviously, you can't get to the 2 million lives saved unless you allow these mayors to take credit for them in the tens of thousands along the way. Now, many of those cities, the 30 largest, are taking ginger steps, Ginger, is that really how they want to put it? We give so much meaning outside of this one to the word ginger these days. But okay, they're stepping gingerly, I guess I would say, towards reopening some businesses. In many cases, they still do not possess the testing capacity necessary to continue their progress in stamping out the virus. That puts the onus on average Americans to continue to limit their activities, even if their governments allow them to open up again. Kolker said she worried that loosening restrictions could put many of those lives saved at risk once again. We're now moving into this very strange phase where states are starting to reopen, and whether or not reopening makes the most sense. I guess they are doing so whether or not reopening makes the most sense, but that's not how she said it. Lives have been saved. It doesn't mean we won't backpedal and kill them after all, I guess. Research using cell phone data. Very disturbing that you can do this, but at least, if we have it and we can use it, we might as well exploit the data for this purpose, even though I wish it didn't exist. Research using cell phone data has showed more Americans are leaving home than they had over the past several weeks. Protests calling on governors to reopen cities have grown in recent weeks. I don't know by how much, really, though polls show the vast majority of Americans are unwilling to venture out unnecessarily. In Wisconsin, viral photographs showed jam-packed bars and restaurants after the state Supreme Court blocked the governor's orders that those businesses stay closed. Kolker said the analysis is meant to show residents that the disruption to daily lives has made a substantial difference. It's really abstract for individuals who are sitting at home doing nothing to think that they are doing something, Kolker said. Public health really is about what each of us does. It's not just about what the government tells us. And that's a nicer way to think of it. We'll see whether this makes any difference. Here, this is interesting. I wasn't planning on going in this direction, except I see a story promoted here. You know how these things work on the Hill. And I have some interesting rebuttal material to share with you that might not have made it to your attention at this point. The promoted story in the Hill headline is this: Fox's Napolitano is the speaker. You know him, Judge Andrew Napolitano, says that the New Jersey gym owner defying stay-at-home orders, he was a big media celebrity in the last couple of days. I'll tell you about him in a second. New Jersey gym owner defying stay-at-home order is an American hero and national treasure. That's interesting, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's hyperbolic and overblown. But we'll just get straight to the point, shall we? Ian Smith, the owner of Attilis Gym in Belmar, New Jersey, he says, was right to resist the restrictions. That fellow that Steve just interviewed, that's Fox and Friends co-host Steve Ducey, that fellow that Steve just interviewed a few minutes ago, Ian Smith, I can say as a former Superior Court judge in New Jersey, you'll see how ridiculous that is when we get there. In what sense is being a former Superior Court judge in New Jersey qualify you to say that this person who's defying the law, by the way, is an American hero and national treasure? But that's what he's saying. We need more people to resist these unlawful incursions into freedom by the governors, Napolitano told Fox and Friends on Tuesday. They're not unlawful orders by the governors, of course. But you know how it is on Fox. You just get to declare things unlawful or unconstitutional if you don't like them. It's a foolish position to be staking out on legal grounds, foolish position to be staking out on law and order grounds. And by the way, yes, logically you can pocket this for yourself, but nobody will acknowledge it outside of, normal people. And the ones you're arguing with out there in the world are not normal people. But just for the record, I would like you to note that there are some lawbreakers that Fox and their pals believe are American heroes. At the same time, of course, you will be saying, you may find yourself involved in an argument over whether or not we ought to be punishing, rounding up, and incarcerating and deporting people who just came here to America to make a better life for themselves and their children. Yes, but they broke the law to do so. They are here illegally, and so therefore it doesn't matter what kind of a great person they are and whether or not they have the same family values I have. They broke the law in order to do this thing. Yes, and the gym owner in New Jersey has also broken the law to do this sort of thing. Well, but this law is unconstitutional and inhumane. Yes, well, many people say the same things about our immigration laws. Yes, but I don't. Now we've hit on the difference, of course. Anyway, that's actually, as it turns out, not particularly relevant to whether or not this is an American hero. And Judge Napolitano, I don't know whether this news will reach him. I don't know whether he's got the kind of conscience that would make him withdraw the statement. But evidence exists that it would be wise for him to do so. Let's see if I can't call it. I don't know if I pocketed this information or not, because it just didn't seem relevant enough to national news. But I guess now Napolitano is making it relevant to national news. Now, I'll have to go back in my Twitter stream to find it. And not even all that far back do we have to go. Thanks to the sharp eyes of tweeter Jimmy Kastner, who is just a regular fellow, but happens to, I don't know whether he remembered this, pardon me, or he looked it up, but our American hero here has a background. Now, directly on the merits of Napolitano's knowledge at the time, you can refute that. We have here the NewJersey.com article, a tweet linking to the article. It says, "Sorry, that defiant New Jersey gym owner is not a hero. He's part of the problem." Now, this is the intuitive answer to Napolitano, written by Steve Politi of New Jersey Advance Media for NewJersey.com. About a month into the pandemic, he says, "A friend of mine made the perfect observation about human nature during this crisis. We won't all get infected by the coronavirus, but we've all been exposed." That, luckily, includes thousands of people who have been exposed as kind, generous, and community-minded. Get it? Different. People like the newspaper delivery man bringing people their groceries for free, or the pizzeria owner who took out a line of credit to keep paying his employees, or the teenager who is delivering hot meals to overworked funeral home directors, forgotten in all of this as frontline workers. I hope we'll remember that for the most part, humanity came together during this awful time in our history. People are taking care of each other. People are good, but there are some people who have been exposed in a bad way. The guy in your town who refuses to wear a mask. The woman yelling at the poor restaurant employees in those viral videos. And there are so many of them now. The patriots, quote-unquote patriots, bringing their assault rifles into state capitol buildings. And now, the South Jersey gym owner trying to pass himself off as a champion for small businesses, the one who declared yesterday that he has, quote, "no doubt that we're on the right side of this," goes onto that list. Ian Smith is no hero. Don't buy into that malarkey, wink, wink, right? And be thankful that the dozens of supporters gathered outside his Belmar gym are in a minority that frankly is getting far too much attention. He isn't just putting his customers at risk by defying the state order to keep non-essential businesses closed. He is sending an awful message that personal needs, his business, and therefore your business, are above the greater good. This is much bigger than opening a gym, Smith, the co-owner of Attilis Gym, said on Sunday before the 8 a.m. reopening the next day. Small businesses and individuals in this state are being absolutely strangled. The help is not there. We are absolutely decimating our economy doing this, and we are destroying people's lives, which is actually a critique of the lack of response from the government that could have made it possible to stay closed for even longer, but didn't, but okay. But here's the thing, the article continues. What if every small business owner decided that he or she wanted to take the same stand as Smith? What if every gymnasium operator and every restaurateur and every movie theater manager suddenly announced that they were done with the lockdown? And people are doing it. And threw open the doors tomorrow? What if hundreds of people in every town came out of their homes to celebrate the defiance and eat free pizza in the parking lot? What would happen then? You would say they're chickens for not eating inside, for one thing. But I know the answer. Thousands more people would get infected, and therefore the already horrifying death toll would grow even higher. This doesn't mean I don't feel sorry for Smith and people like him. You'd be a heartless jerk if you didn't. By the way, don't worry if you are such a heartless jerk. I got more. And there are no shortage of places to direct your outrage. The fact that our state's unemployment system is an unmitigated disaster is a failure that should bring shame on everyone in Trenton who had years to fix it. We're not doing enough to help small businesses, and yes, that does include a Tillis gym. We aren't protecting people from bankruptcy and despair. We're failing in ways that other countries are not, and it's frustrating as all hell. But the problem is not that we can't get a good workout in. All small businesses, despite what a sign outside Smith's gym declared, are not essential during a pandemic like this. Governor Murphy is listening to the experts, and the reasons for the lockdown are based in science. So is the plan to reopen the state. Meh. Some science, anyway. The way to protect ourselves, the only way we have, is to stay away from each other. Smith tried to assure everyone that his gym was taking precautions, that he rearranged the gym equipment to provide more social distancing, and his staff was, quote, stepping up cleaning efforts. Whatever that might mean. That's all well and good, and maybe there will be a time when those measures will be good enough for all fitness centers to open, but this isn't Smith's decision to make. We truly believe that if we don't do this, in the end, we will have zero rights and no say in what happens. Frank Trombetti, the other co-owner at Tillis Gym, said in a Facebook video, he might want to read up on how democracy works next time he's on a treadmill. We're being asked to do something unprecedented in the face of this crisis, and most of us are doing it for the greater good of society, and the data show it's working. Many of us are going a step above, helping people around us get through this with kindness and generosity that should serve as an example for everyone else. The coronavirus is exposing us all, and for some, sadly, it's not pretty. Well, that was helpful from Steve Politi, but there's more. And again, as I mentioned earlier, credit for this goes to Jimmy Kastner. So, our American hero. What about this guy? Does he have any kind of history we need to know about? Yes. And some might think it's irrelevant because it's far in the past and maybe he's changed and maybe he's changed his ways, but apparently not. Let's read a little bit more about Ian Smith, if they'd be so kind. And the photo, I guess, makes it obvious that it's the same guy. Mount Laurel Man, this an article from June 5th, 2008. And it got updated in April of 2019, though I'm not sure how or why. But anyway, Mount Laurel Man sentenced to prison for drunken driving death. America's hero is actually a killer. Thanks to the reporting, also in NewJersey.com, by Jim Six. A former Richard Stockton College of New Jersey student, that's how he was known back in 2008, was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison for the 2007 drunken driving death of Galloway Township teen Kevin Ade. I'm not certain how he pronounces his last name, whether it's Ade, A-D-E, or Ade, Americanized. But this, according to the Press of Atlantic City, which no longer hosts the article for some strange reason. Ian A. Smith, 21, of Mount Laurel, New Jersey, broke down in tears during today's sentencing as he apologized to the family of 19-year-old Kevin Ade. Smith admitted, it's bad enough that it's drunken driving, but just check this out. Smith admitted to drinking 10 to 12 beers. That's an awful lot. Before getting into his car. Now, why did he get into his car at all, right? 10 to 12 beers before getting into his car to go to work on April 28th, 2007. He ran a stop sign and struck Ade's vehicle and killed him. So, 10 to 12 beers, that's a hell of a lot more than most people, I think, who end up getting in their car and say, yeah, I can make it. 10 to 12 beers. Now, secondly, 10 to 12 beers before work. I don't know what kind of work he was doing, but wow, that's extraordinary. Even if you're walking or you got an Uber driver or a designated driver to drive you to work. First of all, 10 to 12 beers. I don't care who's designated driving. I'm glad it's not you, et cetera, but wow. I mean, it can be done, but it's kind of an extreme sort of a thing. And two, to say, well, where can I take you? Hospital, detox center? Well, what are you looking for? And in our day, we might have said Wawa for hot dogs or something like that. But no, imagine getting the answer. Work. Well, you'd have to imagine getting the answer because he didn't call an Uber. There was no Uber, I guess, in 2007, or maybe there was, and it wasn't a big deal then yet. But calling a cab, calling a friend. Where are you going? Work. Work. You just had 12 beers. Yeah, well, I don't know. My job is, I don't know what. What is he doing? Maybe it doesn't matter that you're drunk, but I have a feeling that it probably did. But no, he drove himself and he killed somebody. All terrible things. But what it's really struck me here is this guy actually has an established habit of disregarding the safety of everyone around him and his own safety when he decides it's time for him to go to work. I want to work. I've had 12 beers and it's going to possibly kill somebody, maybe a lot of people, if I go to work now, but that's what I want to do. So I'm going, and now Kevin Ade dies because of that. And you go to prison because of that. Has he learned his lesson now that he broke down in tears during his sentencing? I don't know how long of the 5 years he spent inside, but let's say 2008, he's sentenced, and then what? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So somewhere around June of 2013, his 5 years would be up. So it could be the case that he served the full 5 years, got out, tried to make a better life for himself, opening up a gym, whatever. But let's see, 13, and now 7 years later, as a responsible businessman in Belmar, New Jersey, running a gym and helping people improve their health, et cetera, he's given a chance to show us, kid, have you rehabilitated yourself? And the answer is no. I still don't care if people die when I decide it's time for me to do the thing I want to do. This is not a rehabilitated person. He never came to understand what his responsibility was to others. And it's life and death again, and he still doesn't give a crap. That's your American hero. That part won't really register with Napolitano, but I'd love to get a follow-up. Judge Napolitano, you said he was an American hero and an example for everybody. Did you know that this is actually the second time that he has been willing to risk the lives of himself and those around him to go to work? Wow, what a hero he is. Yes, the first time was the time he drank 12 beers and jumped in a car to go to work and killed a teenager. Oh, that doesn't feel nearly as heroic to me all of a sudden. I would be very interested to see what they have to say about that, but he won't answer that question and no one will put it to him. Bob will speak here with a good comment, right? Quite true. Yeah, now, of course, in the new trolling language of the jackasses out there, won't they just come back with, is getting blind, drunk, and going driving included in My Body, My Choice? They love to troll everybody by adopting that slogan. I don't have to wear a mask because it's my body, my choice. Of course, if I think they'd probably think about it differently if abortion meant possibly firing a shotgun into a crowd of living people as well. But hey, whatever. They get to troll and we get to listen to it. All right. Getting close to the end of the show here. I passed on to those of you who are listening live and watching on Twitter the comment from our friend Mad Hatter, who tweets as Elrond50, of course, in case you aren't following him already, which you should be. You should be following all of our friends here. He says, news coming in from Texas on mail, M-A-I-L, voting, not polling men versus women and who you're going to vote for, but mail-in voting. Let's see, this coming in from, let's see, will it tell us who? David Lee, who is a reporter for Courthouse News in Dallas. Breaking news at that. U.S. District Judge Fred Beery, B-I-E-R-Y, maybe, in San Antonio, grants the Texas Democrats a temporary injunction to allow Texas voters under 65 years old to vote absentee. I guess no excuse absentee. Let's see, writes the state limit, the judge says, state limit of 65 years old or higher is unconstitutionally and excessively burdensome, I guess I will fix that sentence now, on younger voters during the COVID-19 pandemic. So, well worth noting, and I will grab that tweet and what goes along with it and pocket it so I can pass it on to you later in the recap of today's show. All right, getting down to the last couple minutes here, other things that likely ought to be shared. I don't know, let's see what's most important that we can actually fit in. Man, there's still a lot out there. Let me grab this one here, though, from Task and Purpose, the military-focused media outlet. And they have an interesting headline here on coronavirus vaccine possibilities. And I thought maybe you'd like to know. Leaked Pentagon memo warns of a real possibility, quotes there, of COVID-19 resurgence and a vaccine not coming until summer of 2021. That's even that is probably that's not a bad turnaround at all. Summer of 2021 for an actual workable vaccine. Of course, the president promised it before November, et cetera, et cetera. That was a stupid thing to do. Probably not going to happen. Whatever. Even though there's good positive news about trials that are going on. But maybe we rush the thing out and risk everybody's lives for Trump's reelection. That's entirely possible. Haley Britsky writes this piece for Task and Purpose. The people whose job it is to plan for operating in an environment regardless of COVID-19 say they expect it to still be around. The Defense Department should prepare to operate in a globally persistent novel coronavirus environment without an effective vaccine until, quote, at least the summer of 2021. According to a draft Pentagon memo obtained by Task and Purpose, we have a long path ahead with the real possibility of a resurgence of COVID-19, reads the memo, authored for Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, but not yet bearing his signature. Of course, he's not allowed to put his signature to that, I'm sure. Therefore, we must now refocus our attention on resuming critical missions, that part held back, increasing levels of activity, and making necessary preparations should a significant resurgence of COVID-19 occur later this year. And I think we'll all agree military functions are essential ones. Despite its grim forecast, the draft document, it's not daft, but draft document, lays out a framework for the U.S. military's proverbial reopening, which includes the resumption of training exercises, increased operational tempo, and the repositioning of forces and supplies to fight the global pandemic. A Pentagon spokeswoman said the document was outdated, but declined to provide more specifics. It doesn't sound outdated at all. The memo was prepared by Kenneth Rapuano, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Global Security. I'm sure he'll be fired shortly. And is intended to update previous guidance issued by Esper on April 1st, 2020. It's unclear if Esper has seen the memo. The document has not been officially released and could see changes since being circulated among the military services at the beginning of May for feedback, a defense official said on condition of anonymity. All indications suggest we will be operating in a globally persistent COVID-19 environment in the months ahead. This will likely continue until there is wide-scale immunity through immunization and some immunity post-recovery from the virus. The Pentagon framework for operations in a persistent COVID-19 environment relies on a number of assumptions, including the chance of successive waves of infection, continued shortages of personal protective equipment, and lack of a viable treatment or vaccine for COVID-19 until next summer, at least. More waves of infections will occur in clusters that will coincide with the seasonal flu, the memo suggests, while testing will not provide 100% assurance of the absence of the virus. The planning framework detailed in the draft memo also calls for an increase in testing and surveillance, expanded contact tracing capabilities, and the use of a registry to track and closely monitor outcomes of those infected with COVID-19. And those things may not happen The memo stands in contrast to more optimistic assessments given by the Trump administration, including officials like Esper, who said on Friday that the Pentagon would, quote, deliver by the end of this year a vaccine at scale to treat the American people and our partners abroad. No way. We'd love to see if we can do it prior to the end of the year, President Donald Trump said Friday. We think we're going to have some very good results coming out very quickly. A top Pentagon spokesman later clarified the end of the year timeline was merely a goal. Meanwhile, Dr. Fauci recently stated that it's doable to have a vaccine ready in January if things fall in the right place. Remember, go back in time, I was saying in January and February that there would be a year to 18 months, so January is a year. So it isn't that much different from what I had originally said, Fauci said on NBC's Today show. Adding again, the goal is aspirational. Army researchers also pointed to the 12 to 18-month time frame when a vaccine would be deemed safe to use in early March, but some experts say that even 12 to 18 months may not be enough time. We'll see what happens.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waltman.
All right, more important stuff coming up next on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. The Lancet said Trump lied. Oh no, they're willing to say it. And made up a report the leading medical journal never published in his attack on the World Health Organization. Gee whiz, I can't believe that happened. This has been another episode of Yeah.